Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside today will bring a high of 79.6 degrees Fahrenheit with an overnight low of 61.2 degrees. It looks like a comfortable day, perfect for enjoying the outdoors or staying informed with the latest updates. Coming up on Alex's News, we'll delve into the significant implications a Middle East ceasefire holds for global markets and economies worldwide, assessing its potential impact. Then, we'll investigate the compelling reasons behind a state health exchange currently facing a detailed congressional inquiry, exploring the critical questions being raised by lawmakers. We'll bring you these key stories and more right here on Alex's News. Stay tuned for all the important details. We begin this morning with some significant news that sent ripples across global financial markets. On Tuesday, June 24th, a major rally occurred, while oil prices saw a sharp decline. This dramatic shift followed an announcement by former U.S. President Donald Trump, who declared what he called a, quote, complete and total ceasefire, end quote, in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran. Joining us this morning to break down this complex situation is our reporter, Ethan. Ethan, it sounds like quite the turnaround, but reports suggest this truce might be on shaky ground. Can you fill us in on the details?
Grace, you're absolutely right. It's a situation that truly demonstrates how quickly geopolitical tensions can shift markets. President Trump's announcement came late on Monday, June 23rd at 1:15 p.m. According to reporting from U.S. News and World Report, via the Associated Press and corroborated by clickorlando.com, this declaration followed a period of intense hostilities. Just days before, on June 13th, Israel had initiated attacks on Iran, leading to American bombings of Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend. Then, in a retaliatory move, Iran launched limited missile attacks on a U.S. military base in Qatar just this past Monday. It was against that backdrop that Trump stepped in.
So a ceasefire was declared after a flurry of escalating attacks. But you mentioned it's already being described as shaky. What happened so quickly after the announcement?
That's the critical point, Grace. The fragility became apparent almost immediately. Less than 3 hours after the ceasefire was declared, Israel reported that Iran had launched missiles into its airspace. As U.S. News and World Report and clickorlando.com highlighted, this prompted an immediate vow of retaliation from the Israeli side, painting the truce as quite precarious. While Israel maintained these violations occurred, the Iranian military, as noted by WFTV, subsequently denied Israel's claims of any post-ceasefire missile launches. So a classic he said, she said situation, leaving investors on edge, but surprisingly, also quite hopeful.
Indeed, despite that immediate uncertainty, markets reacted with significant optimism. Can you walk us through those impressive market gains?
Absolutely. Investors globally reacted positively, almost as if they were stocking up on good news. U.S. News and World Report, along with clickorlando.com, detailed these widespread gains. Futures for the S&P 500 gained 1%, while Dow Jones Industrial Average futures were up 0.8%. This bullish sentiment wasn't confined to the U.S. In Europe, Germany's DAX leaped 2.2%, Paris's CAC 40 added 1.4%, and even Britain's FTSE 100 rose 0.4%. The rally extended across Asian markets too, with Tokyo's Nikkei 225 rising 1.1%, Hong Kong's Hang Seng gaining 2.1%, and South Korea's Kospi jumping a notable 3%. It seems the mere prospect of de-escalation was enough to fuel a strong market run.
That's quite a bounce back. And what about oil prices, Ethan? We've seen them fluctuate quite a bit with this conflict.
Oil prices, Grace, experienced the reverse effect, taking a significant slide on Tuesday. This continued a decline that began Monday, primarily driven by subsiding fears of an Iranian blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. For those unfamiliar, the Strait of Hormuz is a vital waterway crucial for global crude shipping, and concerns about its disruption had really put a squeeze on prices. U.S. benchmark crude dropped 3% to $66.44 per barrel, according to U.S. News and World Report. It's a remarkable turnaround. As clickorlando.com noted, it had briefly topped $78 and even jumped 6% after trading began Sunday night, before shedding those gains. Analysts, such as Karsten Fritsch of Commerzbank, suggest further price drops are possible if this ceasefire holds. He pointed out, as clickorlando.com reported, that the global oil market is well supplied, and the OPEC Plus alliance plans to add another 410,000 barrels per day at their July 6th meeting, which is just 12 days from today.
So an easing of oil concerns, which could be good news for consumers at the pump. What other broader economic impacts are we seeing from this ceasefire?
Well, Grace, there are ripple effects throughout the economy. For instance, Treasury yields eased, with the 10-year Treasury yield at 4.33% and the 2-year yield at 3.83%, as reported by clickorlando.com. This comes as a top Federal Reserve official indicated support for cutting interest rates at the Fed's next meeting, contingent on inflation pressures remaining contained. The Fed has been cautious this year, concerned about how former President Trump's tariffs might impact the U.S. economy and how higher oil and gasoline prices, which a prolonged conflict would cause, could exacerbate inflation. Investors are now keenly awaiting comments from Fed Chair Jerome Powell to the U.S. Congress, a point highlighted by both U.S. News and World Report and clickorlando.com. Even currency markets saw movement, with the U.S. dollar falling against the Japanese yen and the euro rising against the dollar. It truly shows how interconnected these global events are.
Fascinating, Ethan. It's clear that this ceasefire, however precarious, is making waves across the entire financial landscape. Thank you for this very comprehensive breakdown.
My pleasure, Grace.
When we come back, we have another story that will certainly grab your attention. This is story 1 of 2. Okay, that was quite the story. Shifting gears now, we turn our attention to a developing situation out of Washington, D.C. involving a major health insurance exchange and some rather sensitive data. For more, we go to our reporter, Chloe. Chloe, what can you tell us about what's happening with Covered California?
Thanks, Grace. Covered California, the state's health insurance exchange, faces intense House lawmaker scrutiny for allegedly sharing sensitive consumer health data directly with LinkedIn.
LinkedIn? That seems an unlikely pairing. How did this alleged data sharing come to light?
It did, Grace. This controversy, now sparking a congressional inquiry and proposed class action lawsuit, originated from an April 2025 investigation by the Markup and Cal Matters.
So what exactly did the Markup and Cal Matters uncover? What mechanism was used for this data transfer?
According to their joint investigation, Grace, forensic testing found Covered California's website, coveredca.com, used a LinkedIn Insight tag from February 2024 until early April 2025. This marketing tool inadvertently transmitted health information to LinkedIn.
Inadvertently transmitted is key. What sensitive data are we talking about? Were users aware?
Grace, the breadth of data shared is concerning. Reports indicate transmitted health details like blindness, pregnancy, high prescription use, transgender status, or possible domestic violence. It also included first names, last 4 social security digits, ethnicity, marital status, and doctor search details. This occurred without explicit knowledge or consent.
That's alarming. What has LinkedIn's response been, especially since it seems to contradict their own policies?
Grace, LinkedIn's own user agreement explicitly prohibits its Insight tag on web pages collecting sensitive health information, so it appears a clear violation. LinkedIn has simply declined to comment.
And what about Covered California? How have they reacted?
Covered California has responded. They acknowledged, quote, some sensitive data was inadvertently collected by the tags, end quote, used for marketing to, quote, better understand consumer behavior, end quote. As a precaution, they've paused all advertising-related tracking tags. They're also conducting a full review and hired an independent digital forensics firm.
It sounds like they're trying to put a cap on this data drain. This has certainly caught the eye of lawmakers. Can you tell us about the congressional inquiry?
Absolutely, Grace. Last week, a letter was sent to Jessica Altman, executive director of Covered California, spearheaded by Kentucky Congressman Brett Guthrie and co-signed by other Republican lawmakers. It expresses, quote, deep concern about the privacy and security implications, end quote. They've set a strict deadline of July 1st, 2025, just 7 days from today, for a detailed response.
7 days is a tight turnaround. What specific information are these lawmakers looking for by that deadline?
They are very specific, Grace. Lawmakers want details on data sent, people affected, notification plans, and third-party vendors with tracking policies. They also suggest examination under federal privacy standards, particularly HIPAA. Representative Kevin Keeley has called for an investigation by the Department of Health and Human Services into potential HIPAA violations.
That brings up a critical point. Does HIPAA, a cornerstone of health privacy, actually apply to state health exchanges like covered California? It seems complex.
It is complex, Grace, but potentially yes. While state exchanges aren't always covered entities, HIPAA can apply if they perform functions like Medicaid eligibility, making them hybrid entities. Covered California's own policy states HIPAA adherence. The Department of Health and Human Services also warns against using tracking technologies that disclose protected health information for marketing without HIPAA-compliant authorizations. So HIPAA concerns are legitimate.
So this isn't just an isolated incident in California, is it? Are there broader implications here for how state exchanges handle our data?
Unfortunately, Grace, this issue has deeper roots. This prompted a class action lawsuit against LinkedIn and Google. A subsequent investigation by the Markup and Cal Matters also found 4 other state health exchanges in Nevada, Maine, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island were doing similar data sharing. This suggests a broader, systemic issue. Prior audits, including a 2016 U.S. Government Accountability Office report, highlighted, quote, significant cybersecurity weaknesses, end quote.
So it's a nationwide health check on data security, if you will. It sounds like covered California certainly has its work cut out for it. Chloe, thank you for breaking down this very insightful and frankly concerning report for us.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. In a move that's launching a new defense era, Japan has conducted its first ever live-fire missile test on its own soil. The Ground Self-Defense Force fired a Type 88 surface-to-ship missile in Hokkaido, a significant departure from its usual overseas drills. The test is part of a broader strategy to deter regional threats, particularly from China and North Korea. Officials say Japan is aiming to increase its defense budget to 2% of its GDP by 2027, and is also developing a longer-range Type 12 missile. Meanwhile, Beijing is preparing to march to the beat of its own military drum. China will hold a massive parade in Tiananmen Square on September 3rd to mark the 80th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. President Xi Jinping is set to speak at the event, which will showcase a fleet of new, domestically produced military hardware. Look for advanced tech like the DF-27 hypersonic missile, new J-35 and J-20A stealth fighters, and a variety of unmanned systems all currently in active service. Officials say the display is meant to highlight the nation's strategic deterrence power. Here at home, some federal lines are being blurred. With a significant drop in illegal border crossings, U.S. Border Patrol agents are being redeployed far from the frontier to assist ICE with interior deportation arrests. The Trump administration has set a daily arrest target of 3,000, and agents from places like Yuma, Arizona, have been sent to cities like Philadelphia to help meet that goal. The practice is rooted in a 1953 rule, allowing agents to operate within a 100-mile zone from any border, an area covering 2/3 of the U.S. population. The ACLU has filed numerous lawsuits, arguing the policy leads to constitutional violations and racial profiling. The Trump administration is also looking to axe a decades-old environmental rule. Officials announced plans to rescind the 2001 roadless rule, which has protected 58.5 million acres of national forests from logging and road construction. Agriculture Secretary Brooke L. Rollins says the rule is outdated and hinders wildfire management. But environmental groups are vowing to fight back, calling it a massive giveaway to timber companies. The move would directly impact Alaska's Tongass National Forest, the nation's largest, opening up over 9 million acres to potential logging, mining, and energy projects. And in a story of high interest from Washington, the Federal Reserve appears divided on its next move. Fed Governor Michelle Bowman is now advocating for an interest rate cut at the committee's July meeting. Citing contained inflation, Bowman and fellow Governor Christopher Waller believe a cut should be on the table. Their view puts them at odds with Fed Chair Jerome Powell, who has signaled a more cautious, data-driven approach. The differing opinions come amid sustained criticism of the central bank from the White House, with a final decision expected at the FOMC meeting on July 29th. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.